I'm 62 years old, and my name is Daisy. After teaching elementary school for 35 years, I finally retired last year. Frank and I had been married for 40 years, raised two wonderful children, and built our dream home in Vermont together. We had such beautiful plans for our retirement years, traveling the world, visiting our grandchildren, and enjoying the fruits of our decades of hard work. But something seemed off with Frank lately. His behavior had become strange secretive. Nothing could have prepared me for what I found when I returned home early from visiting my daughter, another woman's clothes hanging in my closet. If you're watching this from your own home, hit like and subscribe as I share how I reclaimed what was rightfully mine after decades of marriage. Growing up in a small town in Kansas, I never imagined the life I would build. I met Frank during my sophomore year of college. He was studying finance and I was pursuing education. We connected instantly over our shared love of classic literature and hiking. His ambition and charm swept me off my feet, and within a year we were discussing marriage. We tied the knot right after graduation, young and full of dreams. Frank started as an entry-level financial advisor while I began teaching at a local elementary school. Those early years were tight financially, but we were happy working together toward our goals. We lived in a tiny apartment, saved every penny, and supported each other's careers. Over the years, Frank climbed the corporate ladder, eventually becoming a senior financial advisor at a prestigious firm. What many didn't see was how I supported his ascent. I proofread his presentations, entertained his clients when necessary, and maintained our home life so he could focus on his career. We were a team in every sense of the word. After 10 years of marriage, we were finally able to buy land in Vermont and build our dream home. I still remember the excitement when we broke ground. I spent months researching design ideas, selecting materials, and overseeing construction details while still teaching full-time. Every corner of that house contained my heart and soul. The garden especially was my pride and joy, with perennial beds I'd nurtured for decades. Our son Michael was born 2 years after we moved into the house. Now, 38, he's a successful cardiologist in Boston, married with twin girls. Our daughter Jennifer followed 3 years later. At 35, she's now a tenured professor of linguistics in New York, brilliant and independent. I couldn't be prouder of both of them. Frank and I had built a wonderful life surrounded by friends who'd been with us through everything. The Andersons next door had been our friends for 30 years, sharing holiday meals and helping during tough times. My best friend Sandra and I met when our children were in kindergarten together, and we'd remained inseparable. When Frank and I both retired last year, our friends threw us an elaborate celebration. Frank seemed genuinely excited about our plans. We'd mapped out trips to Europe, Asia, and South America, places we'd always dreamed of visiting. He'd even surprised me with brochures for a Mediterranean cruise for our upcoming anniversary. In that moment, everything felt perfect. Throughout our marriage, we'd maintained joint accounts. While we made major financial decisions together, Frank handled most of the day-to-day management of our investments and retirement funds. With his expertise in finance, it made sense, and I trusted him completely. Looking back, I should have paid more attention to the subtle warning signs. About 6 months ago, Frank started working late more often. He became protective of his phone, changing passwords and stepping away to take calls. He bought new clothes, started using a different cologne. At the time, I dismissed these changes. After 40 years together, trust wasn't something I questioned. I thought perhaps he was planning a surprise for our anniversary or adjusting to retirement in his own way. I never imagined that these small changes were the first ripples of a tsunami that would wash away everything I thought I knew about our life together. The first clear moment I felt something was truly wrong came 3 months before everything fell apart. Frank and I had always shared our daily experiences over dinner, but suddenly he became vague about his whereabouts during the day. Just meeting up with some old colleagues, or running errands, became his standard responses. One evening, I noticed him quickly closing his laptop when I entered our home office. When I asked what he was doing, he snapped at me, something that had rarely happened in our marriage. Can't I have any privacy anymore? He said irritably. The hurt I felt was immediate, but I chalked it up to retirement adjustment. The passwords were the next red flag. Our shared Netflix account suddenly had a new password. When I asked about it, Frank mumbled something about security concerns and reset it, but the same thing happened with our shared email account for household bills. Then I noticed he'd changed the password to our joint banking portal. Identity theft is a serious concern these days, he explained, not quite meeting my eyes. I'm just being cautious. But why would that require keeping new passwords from me? The business trips were perhaps the most confusing development. Throughout his career, Frank had occasionally traveled for work, but those trips had naturally ended with retirement. Yet suddenly, he was announcing departures to financial conferences or meetings with former clients in other states. I thought you were retired, I said during one such announcement. Semi-retired, he corrected with an edge to his voice. I'm still consulting. It keeps my mind sharp. My friend Sandra noticed the changes too. During a dinner party we hosted, she observed how Frank barely spoke to me all evening, yet was animatedly chatting and laughing with other guests. Is everything okay between you two? She asked me privately while helping wash dishes. Frank seems different. I defended him automatically. He's just adjusting to retirement. You know how men tie their identity to their work. But Sandra's concern planted a seed of worry that grew steadily. The receipts I found while doing laundry one day made that worry bloom into genuine fear. A receipt for diamond earrings from a high-end jewelry store, expensive ones at over $3,000. Frank had never given me diamond earrings, and our anniversary was months away. When confronted, he claimed they were a retirement gift for his former assistant that he'd forgotten to mention. $3,000 for an assistant, I questioned. She worked with me for 15 years, Daisy, he said dismissively. It's appropriate. Later that week, I called my sister Beth in Arizona to voice my growing concerns. I feel like I'm going crazy, I confessed. Frank is acting so strangely, but whenever I bring it up, he makes me feel like I'm being paranoid. Trust your instincts, Beth advised. You've been with him for 40 years. You know when something's off. That evening, I tried again to talk to Frank about the distance growing between us. His response left me cold. Maybe you should see Dr. Peterson again, he suggested, referring to the therapist I'd briefly seen after my mother's death years earlier. You seem anxious and suspicious lately. It's not like you. The comment stung. Was I being paranoid? Was this all in my head to calm my nerves? I decided to review our finances, something I rarely did since Frank handled that aspect of our lives. Logging into our joint checking account with the password Frank had reluctantly shared, I noticed several large withdrawals over the past few months. $5,000 here, $8,000 there. When I asked Frank about these transactions, he sighed as if I was being a nuisance. They're investment opportunities, Daisy. Time-sensitive ones. I've been doing this our entire marriage. Why the sudden interest now? His tone made me feel foolish, but something inside me was screaming that something was very wrong. Still, after 4 decades of marriage, I couldn't bring myself to believe the worst. Not yet. The plan to visit our daughter Jennifer in New York had been on our calendar for months. A week-long stay to help her settle into her new apartment after receiving tenure. Frank had always been close with Jennifer, our academic daughter, who shared his analytical mind. 2 days before our scheduled departure, Frank announced he couldn't come. Johnson has a potential investment opportunity that can't wait, he explained, referring to a longtime client. You go ahead and help Jenny. I'll make it up to her next month. Though disappointed, I packed my bags and headed to New York alone. Jennifer and I had a wonderful few days together painting her new apartment and shopping for furniture. We were supposed to visit a few museums during my last 2 days there when she received an urgent call from her department chair. An important visiting scholar had arrived early, and Jennifer needed to host them immediately. Mom, I'm so sorry. She apologized, genuinely upset. Can we cut our visit short? I promise I'll make it up to you. Understanding the demands of her career, I assured her it was fine and booked an earlier flight home. I didn't tell Frank about the change in plans. I thought I might surprise him with his favorite meal after being away. The house was oddly quiet when I arrived home that Wednesday afternoon. Frank's car was in the driveway, so he was clearly home, but he didn't answer when I called out. Setting my suitcase down in the foyer, I noticed something immediately, a scent that didn't belong in our home, a floral perfume much stronger and more youthful than anything I wore. My heart began pounding as I moved through the house. In the kitchen, there were 2 wine glasses on the counter. In the living room, an unfamiliar women's magazine and a beaded bracelet I'd never seen before. With growing dread, I climbed the stairs to our bedroom. The door was slightly ajar, and I could hear muffled voices. Pushing it open, I froze in absolute shock. There in our bed, the bed we'd shared for decades, was Frank with a woman who couldn't have been older than 35. Long blonde hair, tanned skin, and a look of surprise that quickly morphed into something like triumph when she saw me. "Daisy," Frank said, not jumping up or covering himself as one might expect when caught in such a compromising position. Instead, he sighed as if my arrival was merely an inconvenience. "You weren't supposed to be home until Friday." I couldn't speak. My entire body felt numb as I stared at the scene before me. The woman smiled and extended her hand as if we were meeting at a business function. "You must be Daisy. I'm Amanda. Frank has told me so much about you." "What? What is happening?" I finally managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "Frank actually had the audacity to look annoyed. I was going to tell you when you got back from Jennifer's. Amanda and I have been seeing each other for about a year now. She's moved in. Moved in to our home." I looked around and noticed for the first time that the photographs on my dresser, pictures of our family, had been replaced with images I didn't recognize. "We're taking over now," Frank said, a coldness in his eyes I'd never seen before. "You should find somewhere else to stay." Amanda rose from the bed, wrapping herself in what I realized was my robe. Around her neck gleamed a diamond pendant I'd never seen, clearly the companion to those earrings from the receipt. "Frank and I feel this house better suits our lifestyle," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "And frankly, it needs updating. So much of this decor is elderly." I noticed then that she was wearing my jewelry, pieces Frank had given me for anniversaries and birthdays over the years, my grandmother's pearl earrings, the sapphire bracelet from our 25th anniversary. A year. I finally processed what Frank had said. "You've been seeing her for a year." Amanda laughed, a tinkling sound that grated on my already frayed nerves. "Longer, actually. About 14 months. We met at his retirement party. I was the event coordinator." Instant connection. The betrayal cut so deep I could barely breathe. At my husband's retirement party, a celebration I had largely planned, he had been pursuing another woman. "You need to leave Daisy," Frank said firmly. "Take what you need for a few days. My lawyer will be contacting you about the divorce." Divorce? The word felt foreign in my mouth. "This is my home too, Frank. My name is on the deed." His smile sent chills down my spine. "But I control all our money, don't I? And my name is first on everything. You've never questioned my financial decisions before. Why start now?" The cruel reminder of my trust in him broke something inside me. Tears began streaming down my face as the reality of the situation hit me full force. "Don't make this difficult," Frank continued. "I can make things very hard for you if you fight me on this." Amanda approached me, still wearing my robe and jewelry. "Look at you," she said quietly. "You must have been pretty once, but Frank needs someone with the youth and energy. Someone who understands his needs. It's better this way. You can go knit, or whatever it is women your age do." In that moment, my disbelief transformed into a white-hot rage that I struggled to contain. But looking at Frank's cold expression, I realized arguing now would get me nowhere. I needed to think to plan. "I need to get some things," I said, my voice shaking. "Be quick about it," Frank replied. And don't take anything valuable. Those items are staying with me. As I packed a small bag with trembling hands, the life I thought I had crumbled around me. 40 years of marriage, decades of memories, all apparently worth nothing to the man I had loved and supported my entire adult life. Leaving my own home was the hardest thing I'd ever done. As I backed out of the driveway with just a suitcase of clothes, I caught a glimpse of Frank and Amanda watching from the window, his arm around her waist. The image burned itself into my memory. Sandra welcomed me with open arms when I appeared on her doorstep in tears. "You can stay as long as you need," she assured me, helping me carry my meager belongings into her guest room. That night I sobbed until there were no tears left, recounting the horrific scene I'd witnessed. "He can't just throw you out and move some young girlfriend in," Sandra insisted. "You have rights, Daisy." The next morning, I discovered just how calculated Frank's betrayal had been. My credit cards were declined when I tried to buy toiletries. When I called the bank, I learned Frank had canceled all cards issued in my name. He'd also transferred most of the money from our joint checking account, leaving only a few $100s. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Williams, but your husband made these changes yesterday," the bank representative explained. "As a joint account holder, he has the right to do so." When I tried to return home to gather more of my belongings, I found the locks changed. Through the windows, I could see Amanda already redecorating. My curtains replaced, furniture rearranged, and family photos removed. The final insult came when I checked social media. Amanda had posted photos of herself lounging in my garden, hosting friends in my kitchen, and sleeping in my bed. "New home with my love, blessed, had new beginnings," read the caption. Some of the people in these photos were members of our social circle, friends I'd had for decades, who were now apparently accepting this woman in my place. 3 days after being forced out, I received a text from Frank, "Meeting tomorrow, 10 a.m., Cooper's Coffee on Main, to discuss divorce terms. Come alone." The coffee shop was deliberately public, a place where I couldn't make a scene. Frank arrived with a manila envelope and a smug expression. "Here's how this will work," he began without preamble. "I'm keeping the house, the investments, and most of our assets. You'll get your car, a small portion of our savings, and a modest monthly allowance." I stared at the papers he pushed toward me. "This is everything we built together, Frank. 40 years of marriage. I helped you build your career. I raised our children while working full-time. Half of everything is rightfully mine." His laugh was cold. "Prove it. I've been handling our finances for decades. My name is primary on most accounts. I've made all the investment decisions. My lawyers will drag this out until you have nothing left for legal fees." It was then I learned Frank had already moved significant assets. According to him, several of our larger investment accounts had been reallocated months ago. When I mentioned talking to my own lawyer, his confidence didn't waver. "By all means, Daisy, waste what little money you have left. I've been a financial advisor for 40 years. Do you really think I haven't protected myself?" That afternoon, I received a call from our son Michael. His voice was strange, distant. "Dad told me what's been happening," he said. "He's worried about you, Mom. He said you've been acting erratically, making accusations. He mentioned you might need help." My own son believing I was having some kind of breakdown. "Michael, that's not true. Your father is having an affair. He moved his girlfriend into our house and locked me out." The silence on the other end spoke volumes. "Dad said you might say something like that. He told me it's why he's concerned about your mental state." Frank had poisoned my own child against me. When I hung up, my phone buzzed with text messages from Amanda. "Frank and I are repainting the master bedroom tomorrow. That wallpaper you chose was so outdated, and just so you know, we donated your old clothes to charity. We needed the closet space." Each message was designed to hurt, to remind me that she had taken everything that was mine. Word spread through our community with Frank controlling the narrative. According to friends who still spoke to me, he was telling everyone I'd had a mental breakdown and he was taking care of things while I recovered. Some believed him, some didn't, but the uncertainty and whispers were everywhere. The final blow came when Sandra drove past our house and saw cars lining the driveway. Frank and Amanda were hosting a dinner party. People we had entertained together for years were now dining in my home with the woman who had replaced me. Sitting in Sandra's guest room that night, I felt completely defeated. Frank had taken my home, was draining our finances, had turned our son against me, and was systematically erasing 40 years of our life together. I had never felt so powerless, so utterly broken. 1 week after being forced from my home, I sat across from Gordon Phillips, Sandra's brother-in-law, and a family law attorney. I'd resisted this meeting, convinced Frank was right about having all the power in our situation, but Sandra had insisted. "Before we discuss strategy," Gordon said after hearing my story, "I need to ask, do you have any documentation of your financial situation? Account statements, property deeds, tax returns?" I shook my head sadly. Frank handled all of that. Nothing at all. In 40 years of marriage. His question triggered a memory, something I hadn't thought about in years. 15 years ago, Frank had nearly lost his license as a financial advisor. A client had filed a complaint about unauthorized transactions, and there had been an investigation. Frank had been cleared, but only after I'd spent weeks organizing his chaotic paperwork and creating a filing system for him. "There might be something," I said slowly. "Years ago, I helped Frank through a professional crisis. He was disorganized with his paperwork, and I created backups of everything." Gordon leaned forward. "And where would those backups be now?" Another memory surfaced. After that incident, I developed a habit of keeping copies of important documents, partly to help Frank if anything similar happened again, and partly because the experience had shaken my confidence in his organizational skills. I'd stored duplicates of tax returns, property documents, investment statements, and more. "I have a storage unit," I told Gordon. "Frank doesn't know about it. I started renting it after his mother passed away. We needed somewhere to store her furniture temporarily, but after we distributed it to family members, I kept the unit for seasonal decorations and paperwork." The next morning, Sandra drove me to the storage facility. With shaking hands, I unlocked the unit and located the plastic bins labeled financial records. Inside were 15 years of documented financial history, including evidence that would change everything. Back at Gordon's office, we spread the documents across his conference table. What emerged was a pattern of financial misconduct that stunned even the experienced attorney. Frank had been misappropriating client funds for years, borrowing money to make risky personal investments, then replacing it before audits. He'd also been significantly underreporting our income on tax returns, hiding money in accounts I'd never known about. "Daisy," Gordon said gravely, "this isn't just ammunition for a divorce case. This is evidence of criminal activity, tax fraud at minimum, possibly client fund misappropriation." The revelation hit me hard. The man I'd been married to for 40 years, the father of my children, was not who I thought he was at all. "What does this mean for me?" I asked. "It means you have leverage," Gordon explained. "Frank doesn't know you have these records. He thinks you're powerless without access to his financial information. But this changes everything." Over the next few days, Gordon helped me develop a strategy. We documented every instance of Frank's misconduct, organized the evidence chronologically, and prepared formal complaints to the relevant authorities. We also gathered evidence of his recent actions, the changed locks, canceled credit cards, drained accounts, all done without my knowledge or consent. Meanwhile, my daughter Jennifer had become suspicious of her father's version of events. During a video call, she noticed my distress despite my attempts to hide it. "Mom, what's really going on? Dad's story doesn't make sense." I finally broke down and told her everything. The affair, Amanda moving in, being locked out of my home, the financial manipulation. Unlike her brother Jennifer, believed me immediately. "I'm coming to see you," she insisted. "And I'm bringing my friend Patrick, who's an accountant." We're going to help you fight this. With Jennifer's support and Gordon's legal guidance, my confidence began to grow. I carefully documented everything Frank and Amanda did, from the social media posts in my home to the text messages taunting me. I reached out to friends who hadn't fallen for Frank's lies, building a support network. Most importantly, I kept my newfound advantage secret. Frank still believed I was defenseless, and I needed him to maintain that illusion a little longer. We need to be strategic about when we reveal what you know, Gordon advised. The element of surprise is powerful. As I prepared for battle, the pain of betrayal remained acute, but it was now accompanied by something new: determination. For the first time since finding Amanda in my bed, I felt a glimmer of hope. Frank had underestimated me in the most profound way possible, and he was about to learn a very expensive lesson. 2 weeks after being forced from my home, I made 2 phone calls that would change everything. The first was to the ethics department at Frank's former firm. Though retired, he was still affiliated as a consultant and subject to their professional standards. My name is Daisy Williams. I'm the wife of Frank Williams, and I need to report serious ethical violations, I said calmly to the compliance officer who answered. I provided just enough information to trigger a formal investigation without revealing all my evidence. The second call went to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Tax fraud exceeding certain thresholds becomes a federal offense, and Frank had crossed that line years ago. Again, I provided basic information, enough to open a case. That same day, Gordon Messenger delivered comprehensive evidence packages to both entities, as well as to the State Financial Regulatory Board. Within hours, my phone rang. Frank, his voice tight with panic. "What have you done?" he demanded. 2 investigators showed up at my office this morning asking questions about client accounts from years ago. I kept my voice steady. "I don't know what you're talking about, Frank. You're the one who handles all our finances, remember?" His breathing grew rapid. "If someone's making accusations, you need to tell me right now. This could affect both of us." "Really, I thought we were getting divorced. I thought you were keeping all the assets. So how would your problems affect me?" He hung up abruptly. 3 hours later, Sandra reported seeing Amanda leaving our house with several suitcases climbing into a taxi without Frank. The rats were abandoning the sinking ship. That evening, Frank's calls became desperate. "Daisy, we need to talk. There's been a misunderstanding. These investigators are asking questions that could cause problems for both of us." I agreed to meet him at Gordon's office the following day. When Frank arrived, his confident demeanor had vanished. He looked haggard eyes, bloodshot hair uncombed. "What is this about Daisy?" he asked, then noticed Gordon. "Who's this? I told you to come alone." "This is my attorney, Gordon Phillips," I replied calmly, "and we're here to discuss our divorce settlement." Frank scoffed, some of his arrogance returning. "I already presented my terms. They're non-negotiable." Gordon opened a folder and placed several documents on the table: copies of altered tax returns, unauthorized client fund transfers, and records of hidden accounts. "Mr. Williams," Gordon said professionally, "my client has documentation of approximately 15 years of financial misconduct on your part: tax fraud, misappropriation of client funds, hidden assets. Shall I continue?" The color drained from Frank's face as he recognized the documents. His eyes darted to me in disbelief. "How did you—" "I kept copies," I said simply, "of everything, for 15 years. That's impossible. All those records were in my office locked away." I smiled for the first time in weeks. "I organized your files during that investigation years ago. Remember? I made duplicates of everything. It's what a supportive wife does, backs up important documents." Frank slumped in his chair, the reality of his situation sinking in. "What do you want?" Gordon presented our settlement terms. The house transferred solely to my name, 75% of all marital assets, full ownership of our vacation property in Maine, and specific retirement accounts. Frank would keep enough to live comfortably, but nowhere near the wealth he'd expected to enjoy with Amanda. "This is robbery," Frank protested weakly. "No," I corrected him. "Robbery is taking what doesn't belong to you, like moving your girlfriend into our home and locking me out, like canceling my credit cards and emptying our joint accounts." The fight had gone out of him. "And the investigations? That depends on you," Gordon explained. "My client is willing to provide a statement of cooperation regarding certain aspects of these matters, potentially mitigating some consequences. If you agree to these terms immediately and stop all attempts to manipulate or defame her." Frank signed the papers that afternoon. By evening, I had keys to my home again. The scene when I returned was both satisfying and sad. Amanda had indeed fled, taking only her personal belongings and leaving behind the chaos of their brief occupation. My home had been carelessly treated. Wine stains on furniture, unfamiliar food rotting in the refrigerator, my garden neglected. While the regulatory investigations proceeded, Frank moved into a small apartment across town. His professional reputation was in tatters. Most of his wealth transferred to me through the settlement. The criminal investigation resulted in substantial fines rather than jail time, largely due to my statement as Gordon had promised, but Frank would never work in finance again. Perhaps most painfully for him, the truth about his behavior spread through our community. The friends who had attended his dinner party with Amanda now avoided him completely. My son Michael, upon learning the full story and seeing the evidence, called to beg my forgiveness for doubting me. Amanda, I learned later, had already moved on to another wealthy, older man in a nearby town. She never contacted Frank again once his financial situation changed. Within a week of signing our settlement, I had fully reclaimed my home and my assets. Frank's attempt to take everything from me had resulted in him losing almost everything instead, all because he'd underestimated the woman who had stood beside him for 40 years, and because I'd made that one fateful call. Standing in my garden, 6 months after the day I found Amanda in my bed, I realized how much healing had occurred. The initial weeks back in my home had been difficult, removing traces of their presence, reclaiming spaces that felt violated, sleeping alone in a bed meant for two. But gradually, the house became mine again, transformed by small changes that erased painful memories. I redecorated room by room, painting walls in bright, cheerful colors that Frank had always vetoed. I rearranged furniture, bought new bedding, and redesigned spaces to reflect my tastes alone. The master bedroom became a peaceful sanctuary with a reading nook I'd always wanted it did. Frank's office transformed into a craft room where I explored painting, a passion I'd set aside decades ago. The loneliness was sometimes overwhelming. 40 years is a long time to share your life with someone, and their absence leaves an echoing void. There were nights I cried myself to sleep mourning not just the marriage I lost, but the man I thought I'd known. A man who had never actually existed. Sandra was my rock during those early months. She checked on me daily, dragged me out for walks when I wanted to isolate, and listened patiently through tearful conversations. "You're grieving," she reminded me. "Not just Frank, but your idea of your marriage. That takes time." I found unexpected solace in a support group for divorced women over 50. Listening to their stories made me realize I wasn't alone in my experience. Many had faced betrayal after decades of marriage, forced to reinvent themselves at an age when society often renders women invisible. Their resilience inspired me. "We're not starting over," said Grace, a 70-year-old, who divorced after finding her husband's 10-year affair. "We're continuing our journey with unnecessary baggage removed." That perspective shifted something in me. Perhaps Frank's betrayal, painful as it was, had freed me from a relationship that had never been what I thought. Jennifer visited regularly, her unwavering support healing the family fracture. Michael took longer to fully understand what had happened, but eventually our relationship began to mend. He brought his children to stay with me for a week that summer, precious time with my grandchildren that helped restore joy to my home. My volunteer work began almost accidentally. One of the women from my support group worked at a legal aid clinic, focusing on helping women navigate divorce after long marriages. When she mentioned they needed people to help clients organize financial documents and prepare for meetings with attorneys, I realized my experience had given me valuable insight. 3 days a week, I worked with women facing situations similar to mine, but without the financial evidence I'd fortunately preserved. I couldn't change outcomes for everyone, but I could help them ask the right questions, look in the right places, and avoid the pitfalls I'd nearly fallen into. Frank continued his downward slide. I saw him once unexpectedly at the grocery store. He looked aged beyond his years, shoulders hunched, hair completely gray. He nodded awkwardly when he spotted me, but didn't approach. There was nothing left to say. When friends asked if I hated him, I found the answer surprising even to myself. Hate requires energy. I'm no longer willing to give him, I explained. I've let him go completely. That wasn't forgiveness. I made that distinction clear. It was something else, a refusal to let his betrayal define the rest of my life. I hadn't forgotten what he'd done, but I removed its power to control my emotions. 1 year after our divorce, I took my first solo international trip. 2 weeks in Italy, something Frank had always vetoed as too touristy. I sent postcards to my children and Sandra images of myself smiling in front of ancient ruins and enjoying long lunches at sidewalk cafes. Each photo was evidence of my reclaimed life. During that trip, I met Harold, a retired professor traveling with a historical society group. Our connection was immediate but uncomplicated. Just two people enjoying conversation over wine-sharing stories without expectation. We exchanged contact information before parting, and his occasional emails became something I looked forward to. "You're blushing," Jennifer teased when I mentioned him during her visit last month. "Don't be ridiculous," I protested. "I'm 63 years old." "And apparently not dead," she replied with a grin. "Whether anything develops with Harold remains to be seen. What matters is that I'm open to possibilities again, something I couldn't have imagined during those dark days after Frank's betrayal. Looking back at the 40 years I spent with a man who ultimately betrayed me so completely, I don't see them as wasted years. They gave me my children memories I still treasure and experiences that shaped me. Frank's final betrayal was terrible, but it also revealed a strength in me I might never have discovered otherwise. Sometimes endings become beautiful beginnings if we're brave enough to walk through the pain. I lost a husband, but found myself, my authentic self, not defined by my role as wife or mother, but by my own resilience and worth. If my story resonates with you, remember this: your value doesn't diminish because someone failed to see it. And sometimes the people who try to take everything from you inadvertently give you the greatest gift, the opportunity to rebuild on your own terms, creating something even more beautiful than what was lost. Have you ever had to reinvent yourself after a major life change? How did you find the strength to start again? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story helped you in any way, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and transformation. Thank you for listening, and remember, it is never too late to reclaim your life and discover your true worth.